Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined as always by my trusted colleague, Wes Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field to preview Sunday's Packers-Bears showdown. It will be at Soldier Field in Chicago, a noon Central Time kickoff. And Wes, before we dive a little bit deeper into this 4-5 Chicago Bears team, a quick update on the health department for the Packers. Quarterback Jordan Love, a full participant in practice on Wednesday, took all of the reps. That was certainly good news to hear. Jair Alexander, Evan Williams, Josh Myers, all back at practice on Wednesday after missing the last game against the Lions before the bye. Colby Wooden, defensive lineman, second-year pro, he was the only player on the Packers' current active roster who did not practice on Wednesday. He has a shoulder injury. By all accounts, at least so far, the bye week did some good for the Packers as far as their injury report.
You missed the biggest one of all, Michael. Tucker Kraft no longer in the red non-contact jersey. Tucker Kraft will once again be unleashed on the Packers defense in practices after having to take off him here the last couple months. But, all joking aside, I felt like it was a reason why I ended up doing my Thursday morning story on. I mean, this was what everybody was waiting to see. You sat Evan Williams, you sat Jair Alexander, you sat Josh Myers going into the Lions game. Jordan was dealing with what he was dealing with. How are they going to look on the other side of this thing? I thought Wednesday's practice obviously was very positive. Nobody's making any promises. Evan Williams wasn't, Josh Myers wasn't at his locker, but it does sound like there's optimism there that all those guys are making the progress you want to see. And even more than that, Michael, I just look at a team that did so many things well in the first half of the season, despite some, not a huge rash of injuries, but like nagging things at bad positions where you don't want to have nagging things, right? When you think about the quarterback issues Green Bay went through, when you think about the secondary and some of the things they've had to navigate, to getting back a guy like Evan Williams with how well he's played in the first half of the season, what that could do for the Packers. We saw the domino effect of Josh Myers not being out there, Elton Jenkins having to move in, different communication setup up front. I just feel like what we saw is Green Bay getting closer to being healthy, which means them getting closer to being comfortable within their assignments. And from there, hopefully, the Packers can continue to fly here in the second half.
Yeah, and we'll see how things play out for the rest of the week. Obviously, Thursday's practice is always a big indicator because they put the pads on. It's really more of the full contact practice the one time they do that during the week. So we'll keep our eye on that injury report as the week unfolds. The opponent this week, the Chicago Bears, we talked about a little bit on our last show. This is a team that was one play away from being 5-2 and feeling really, really good about itself. The Hail Mary goes the wrong way for Chicago in Washington. They lose to the Commanders. And there's been some kind of call it a hangover effect, whatever you want to say. The last two Bears performances have just been complete duds. They've gotten, handled quite easily, to be brutally honest, by the Arizona Cardinals and by a struggling New England Patriots team. That has now led to a change at offensive coordinator. Shane Waldron is out, and Thomas Brown is in as offensive coordinator for Chicago. And, I'm not sure exactly how much is going to change with the Bears offense. I think you have to be kind of ready for some unscouted looks. You have to be ready for some tendency breakers. If I'm Thomas Brown, I'm coming into this game against the Packers saying, our rookie quarterback is having his struggles. Our pass protection unit is having its struggles as the Bears gave up 9 sacks to the New England Patriots. The running back is the best friend in those situations, the running game. I think the Packers have to be ready for a healthy dose of DeAndre Swift coming at him in this game.
Yeah, 100%. The tough thing was, I was looking back at that game against New England and where they came up short, certainly the 9 sacks jump off the page, and we're not going to sit here and you can listen to Chicago media as far as who's all to blame for that. But one thing that I think has really hurt this team when I look at them on paper is the fact that Braxton Jones has been banged up. Darnell Wright has been banged up. Those are your two bookends on the offensive line. They've had a lot of changes on the interior offensive line there, and it just seems like they haven't been able to get into much of a rhythm. And I covered this on Insider Inbox earlier this week, where I feel like when you're building a team and you have a new quarterback, a young quarterback, you have to build from the inside out. And in no disrespect to Chicago or what they're doing, but I mean, they kind of built from the outside in, it feels like. Now, that being said, DeAndre Swift was a move they needed to make. You're going to lose David Montgomery. You're going to lose some of those proven assets in your backfield. You have to find a way to be able to make up for that.
Right.
Swift, to me, he's been okay this year. I thought last year he was sensational. I thought it made it look like both them and the Lions made the right moves with how they did their running back situations. But this year it's been a little bit harder running. But that being said, he does have a 56-yard touchdown. He is the lead back. There is no committee there. This is the guy.
Yeah.
And he's been able to stay healthy for the most part in that role in Chicago. And when you're talking about, as much as everybody will talk and discuss about unscouted looks and trick plays and all these other things, the number one thing that I would imagine the Bears are thinking right now is, how can we make life easier on Caleb Williams? And to your initial point, that goes back to the run game and getting in favorable down and distance.
I think so too. I think that's what this Bears offense is going to start to focus on to really help out Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall draft pick. As far as the passing game goes, he's certainly spread the ball around quite a bit. Roma Dunza, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, all these guys have produced. Nobody really stands out as necessarily like the go-to guy for Caleb Williams, which I think is a good thing for a young quarterback. But the Bears need to find something to hang their hat on offensively to really be the foundation of what they're going to do and who they're going to be. And I think whatever that is going to be, I think it's going to start this week against the Packers because of this big shift now at offensive coordinator.
There's just no explosiveness to the offense is what my initial thing has been. Again, that's not a criticism. It's just the facts. I mean, they have a bunch of guys that have caught the ball. Nobody's had that big game breaker. I think their longest catch of the year is 47 yards. And it wasn't even a touchdown. I mean, like, they haven't had those explosive type plays that I think sometimes can really help boost a young quarterback's confidence. And because of that, they are the 31st ranked third down offense in the National Football League. It's just been tough sledding offensively, trying to find some consistency there. Now, that being said, I want to make this clear because I know we'll transition here shortly to the defense, but the Chicago Bears are 4-5. They lost 3 in a row here now coming out of the bye. They are still undefeated this season when their offense scores over 20 points.
Yeah.
Defensively, they can play with anybody in the league. It's just been a grind trying to find ways to generate offense. And 23 straight drives now, whatever it is, without a touchdown or passing touchdown. I mean, there is a lot of bad mojo feeling around this team right now. But that being said, an opening drive where you go down the field and you score, it changes everything, especially when you make a change on the coaching staff. So my message this week has been, you got to treat this team just like you treated the Detroit Lions. You have to have your antennas up. You got to think about them as not just an opponent and obstruction from your 7th win, but you got to get NFC wins. You got to get division wins. And it starts with the Chicago Bears and keeping this winning streak going under Matt LaFleur at Soldier Field.
Yeah, I think there's a perception out there amongst Packer fans because the Bears are struggling so much, especially on offense. They can't get things going with Caleb Williams and all that. There's this perception that that if the Packers, they get themselves healthier on offense, they get rolling, that they can go into Soldier Field and steamroll the Bears here. You look at this Bears defense, and that's simply not going to be the case. No. I mentioned this in Insider Inbox. I mentioned it on our 3 Things video with Larry yesterday. This Bears defense has allowed more than 21 points only once all season, and that was to the Arizona Cardinals, the game right after the Hail Mary. This is a defense that's taken the ball away 16 times. They have 8 interceptions. They have 8 fumble recoveries. That's only a few takeaways behind the Packers. It's only a few takeaways off of the league lead across the board. 2 big things situationally where this defense is really, really tough. They are 7th in the league in third down percentage allowed. I believe it's around 33%. Only allowing third down conversions a third of the time. And this is statistically the best defense in the league in the red zone in terms of the low percentage of touchdowns allowed. And that really becomes a very interesting thing in this matchup because while the Bears are the top-ranked team in red zone defense, the Packers are near the bottom, 29th in the league in red zone offense. So there's a lot to look at here from a situational and a statistical matchup between the Packers offense and the Bears defense. One significant injury safety Jaquan Brisker has already been ruled out for this week. He's in the concussion protocol in Chicago. They've already said he's out this week. He won't be playing. That's a big loss because he's kind of one of those free-ranging safeties. He can play deep. He can attack the line of scrimmage. He's all over the field. He won't be out there. But this Bears defense is not to be trifled with. These guys can play. There's really only been one game, and that was the game against the Cardinals. The final score, I believe, was 29-9. That's really the only game where the Bears defense did not give Chicago a legitimate chance to win the football game.
Yeah, and a couple things that go into this. One, I guess that means we'll probably see Jonathan Owens on Sunday.
Perhaps.
As far as the backup there. I know they have some younger guys as well. But here's what I want to say about this. Because this came up this week because obviously Matt Eberflus, he's on the hot seat, he's under the microscope.
Yep.
Whatever idiom you want to use on that. But I want to say the Chicago Bears are doing something right. Because yes, offensively it's not been what you wanted. But when you have a defensive head coach and your team's not performing the way you want them to perform, I feel like you gain nothing from letting that defensive coach go in the middle of a season if their unit, the area that they specialize in, the area that they master in, if that unit's performing. The Bears have done that this season. I mean, you look at what the Jets are going through right now. Not only did you lose your head coach, I felt like they lost their defensive identity when they let Robert Saleh go.
Absolutely.
The Bears are committed to a long-term plan here. There are going to be some strikes and some balls, and you're going to have some swings and misses. But defensively, Matt Eberflus coming here from Indianapolis, it's been everything you would expect the defense to be. They just haven't won enough, and they haven't done enough offensively. But that being said, the Bears unit, why they got off to their fast start, it was because of defense and special teams. It was because they were finding ways to win those close matchups. They lost that the last few weeks, but that doesn't mean it can't come back.
Right.
So and it's a very diverse group. I think 14 different guys that have a sack this season. You talk about, Tremaine Edmonds in the middle of that defense. They've always had really good linebacker play there.
TJ Edwards is in that.
TJ Edwards.
One of their team captains.
Yes. And the fact that, Montez Sweat, all this conversation between him and the Packers and the back and the forth and the rivalry he's talking about. Yeah, it is what it is when the game gets played, but you can tell these guys are motivated to play it. So I just think it's a matchup where the Green Bay Packers have to take the threat seriously. You have to put points on the board. You have to protect the football. You have to play clean. But more than anything, the opportunities that are presented to make the Bears question what they're doing, those are the times where you really have to pounce because they aren't going to last there forever. And if they get the wind in their sails in this matchup, particularly early on at their home stadium against the Green Bay Packers, a team they have not beat since the Mike McCarthy era, they're going to be feeling themselves.
Yeah, and there's a lot of curiosity with regard to the fan base as well as the players in the locker room as to just maybe what the offense can do with the changeup at coordinator, emphasizing some different things, some tendency breakers, all that kind of stuff. And as you say, especially when you're playing at home, if you start to get the wind in your sails a little bit, it doesn't matter who the opponent is on the other side. The Bears are going to start feeling like that team that was 4-2 and on the verge of being 5-2, not the team that has really struggled these last couple of weeks and seen their season start to slip away.
And I want to make sure I bring this back full circle because the point I'm trying to make with all my assessments here is Thomas Brown was the offensive coordinator for Carolina Panthers last year. He was the guy that had to go in there, and they had to try to devise a game plan for Bryce Young against the Packers, and they nearly won the game. Young had one of the best games of his career to this point.
Carolina probably wins that game if Carolina gets the ball back, or just gets the ball back 10 seconds sooner. I mean, literally another 10 seconds on the clock, and Bryce Young might have beaten the Packers in that game.
And why did it happen? Why did it play out that way? Because the Packers did not put away Young in that offense early on.
Right.
They made some explosive plays. They had some big plays late, and then they almost came close to beating them. So those are all things you have to keep in mind. But yeah, there's a lot of different traps and things you have to be cognizant of in this matchup with the Chicago Bears. But more than anything, getting back to your initial point, the Bears have not scored a lot lately. They have not had a lot of success. They had an absolute awful way to lose a football game against Washington.
Yep.
You have to make sure you keep them down.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of sponsor business here. West Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousins Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, Mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. All right. Keys to victory. We've obviously suggested, hinted at.
Oh, I got plenty more.
What?
I have plenty more.
Okay.
We haven't even scratched the surface yet, bruv.
All right. Go ahead.
Oh, you can continue talking if you want.
No, that's all right. I'll toss it over to you. What's at the top of your list?
Packers have to run the football in this game. They have to run it well. When you look defensively at what Chicago, where they've struggled this season, it's been against the run. Now, again, there's a couple chunk games in there, I think, that have added that up, but it's not just the fact they're 24th in rushing defenses here. It's the fact they're 28th in yards per carry. Almost 5 yards per carry allowed this season.
Which means you can stay ahead of the sticks as long as you're not committing penalties, right?
Bingo, what's its name-o? I mean, that's the fact. I mean, right. When you are able to control the line of scrimmage the way that the Packers have when they've been successful this season, I feel like the blueprint is there. So many people are going to make this about Jordan Love. He's a full participant. He's getting all of his practice reps. Everything's hunky-dory in that regard. Josh Jacobs is a third leading rusher in the National Football League right now this season at this point. Getting him going, getting manageable down and distance, and then executing when you get in the red zone, I think is going to be absolutely paramount. And Michael, I don't want to steal any of your stuff. I know you're going to have plenty of points here too. But the fact of the matter is the Chicago Bears gave up 9 sacks last week.
Yeah.
The Green Bay Packers have made some significant changes with their defensive front. I'm very interested to see exactly who the personnel is going to be in those third down rush packages. Will we see more Aaron Mosby? Could Brenton Cox Jr. be involved in that? Where is Rashawn Gary going to be? Hey, Edgerrin Cooper is playing really well. Maybe he gets involved in this thing. Whatever the case is, Evan Williams talked about this at his locker on Wednesday. Caleb's going to run a little bit. He's going to try to extend plays, but that's also an opportunity if you plaster to potentially make a play.
Yeah.
Packers have to be able to execute in that regard.
Yeah, what rises, and I certainly agree with all of those as keys to victory.
Thank you.
No disagreement there whatsoever. For me, what rises to the top of my list, I go back to the situational discrepancy that we talked about before. The Bears are the number 1 red zone defense in the league statistically. The Packers are the 29th ranked red zone offense in the league. Pretty amazing, quite frankly, that the Packers are 9th in the league in scoring, yet 29th in the league in red zone. It tells you how many opportunities the Packers have left out there and how close, as we talked about on our last show, how close the Packers are to seeing this offense really hit full gear and hit full stride. I think this game comes down to, can the Packers finish drives? Because I think with Josh Jacobs, with the balance that the Packers generally have on offense, they will be able to move the football against the Chicago Bears. But when they get into scoring territory, are they going to be able to finish drives against the number 1 red zone defense in the league and get the ball in the end zone, or are they going to be relegated kicking field goals all day?
Yep.
If the Packers, you're not going to finish every single drive, but obviously, if you're in the red zone 4 times, there's a huge difference on the scoreboard between going 3 for 4 in the red zone and going 1 for 4 in the red zone, right? That really becomes the difference in where I think this game gets decided.
It's funny too you mentioned that, because if you want to look at the glass, not that was glass half empty, but the other aspect of it, when you talk about the discrepancy between these two teams, it is the explosive plays. Now, I don't have the true media stats in front of me, but when you talk about how many yards Green Bay's produced, how many points they've still produced, it's because the explosive plays they've had a lot of times have also led to touchdowns. Whether it's that drive or whether it's the play itself, they've been able to extend for that, and that's where Chicago has struggled this season. So bringing it back to what I was talking about with the defense and what they have to do against the Bears, not allowing those plays to rupture, playing well in front of them, and making sure that you're making the tackles that you have to make. Certainly, there's going to be a lot of different factors and variables that get played into this outcome and how they're going to win it, but there's a lot of things that Green Bay does significantly better than the Chicago Bears. They need to be able to carry that over into this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be who you are, and the Packers know they have the things that they need to clean up and all of that. But really, as much as we've talked about the change in offensive coordinator and how good this Bears defense can be and everything, this still just is. It's one of those games that strikes me where this is about what the Packers do. It's
100%.
The Bears do. If the Packers bring their A game and play like it, the Packers are the better team. They've proven it over the long haul so far this season, and if they do that, they should be able to win this game. Looking around the league, Week 11, elsewhere in the NFC North, Minnesota is at Tennessee. Jacksonville is at Detroit. So those are a couple of NFC North versus AFC South matchups. I'm not going to be holding my breath on either one of those, quite frankly. Jacksonville playing with Mac Jones again at quarterback. They couldn't do diddly squat on offense against
diddly poo, I think is the
what's that?
Is the expression diddly poo.
Oh, okay. Well,
Forget who said
diddly
that.
squat is the one I grew up
Yeah.
with. So I'm not holding my breath on either one of those games. I mean, it will be interesting to see Minnesota going on the road back-to-back weeks now with all of, last week they went to Jacksonville, couldn't score a touchdown, and Sam Darnold threw 3 interceptions. So will their offense, get something going more in a positive direction against Tennessee or not? But it is interesting, though, that if I believe it comes down to if the Vikings and the Lions win these 2 games, the NFC North versus AFC South will be all done after this weekend. And if the Vikings and the Lions win these games, the final tally will be 14-2.
Wow.
To this point, the only AFC South versus AFC South beating the NFC North is that both Houston and Indianapolis beat Chicago.
And Tennessee should have too.
And Tennessee should have beaten Chicago.
Dude, you know what's hilarious about that now that you think
But yeah, possibly 14-2 if the favored teams, the Vikings and the Lions, win this week.
So you're telling me the NFC North is done with the season series with the AFC South this weekend?
After this weekend.
And this is the first time the Bears are playing an NFC North opponent?
Correct. Yeah,
wow, they did a number on that schedule.
Yeah, the schedule this year is just it's bizarre. It's bizarre in a number of ways. But aside from that, this is a really, really interesting week, this Week 11 schedule in the NFL, because it is the first time, from what I read, it is the first time since the league merger that in Week 11 there are 3 games where all 6 of the teams have 7 or more wins in Week 11 playing each other. And it starts tonight.
Wow.
Starts on Thursday Night Football with Washington at Philadelphia, and then continues on Sunday with Baltimore at Pittsburgh and Kansas City at Buffalo. So these are some major midseason matchups here. And of course, Packers fans are going to have, their eye on Packers Bears, and that's where our attention will be. But this is quite the slate of games for 1 week in the NFL.
Well, in Washington and Philly, man, you were talking about it last week on the show. I mean, the fact that we've got these really pivotal, critical division matchups here on Thursday Night Football. 1, it's obviously, I agree with you, it's the way to go. But 2, it really raises the stakes because you're looking at Washington now where, hey, dude, they're 7-3. I will not disrespect that record. Obviously, I've said up here before, and I've talked to you about Jaden Daniels and everything that
And they were an eyelash from being 8-2 because they were right there with a chance to beat the Steelers last week.
They absolutely were, but the part of it that I thought was really interesting when I was breaking it down, because I'm sophisticated. I have NFL GSIS and everything. The strength of victory for Washington is one of the worst in the National Football League. It's 338. I guess it's. Yeah, no, only 23 wins against their opponent that their opponents have won. This is a big moment for Washington to show that they can play with one of the upper echelon teams. And credit to Philadelphia, the way that they've kind of been able to pull itself back together after how last year unfolded. They're proving once again that they are still not to be trifled with in that NFC East. And
absolutely,
the part that I didn't know all the ins and outs of it when you were explaining some of those statistics with the 7 and 8 win teams playing each other, when I first looked at the schedule this week, what I thought was most interesting is how much teams are paired against each other of similar record. Really, Detroit and Jacksonville's the only really huge difference. I mean, when you look at Kansas City, Buffalo, but even there's 5 and 4 playing 4 and 5 teams. I mean, there's a lot on the line in terms of stakes for a Week 11 matchup, and certainly Green Bay is a part of that. You're trying to extend themselves out from the Bears and also keep themselves in contention there with their other 2 NFC North adversaries.
Yeah, well, in those big matchups with teams with 7+ wins, 2 of those are division games: Washington at Philadelphia in the NFC East, Baltimore at Pittsburgh in the AFC North. That's one that'll have a lot of eyes on it. Russell Wilson has taken over at quarterback for the Steelers, and that team keeps winning. And then a lot of eyes. I believe I'm assuming it's kind of the game in the national window. The Kansas City is at Buffalo. What do you think? Do you think Kansas City stays undefeated, or do the Bills hand the Chiefs their first loss? The Kansas City's they've been riding right on the edge, and not just a blocked field goal last week, but we've seen in other games, it was overtime against Tampa Bay on Monday Night Football the week before. They've had other games earlier in the season that came right down to the end. And no apologies, Kansas City is finding ways to win, and you take nothing away from them. But they have been on the edge, and you have to feel like one of these teams, and maybe it's Buffalo this weekend, is finally going to knock them off.
They're on the edge of glory. And I'll tell you what, I think Buffalo wins. That's my pick for this one.
Okay.
Not that I often offer predictions, but that is what I'm thinking. But here's the thing that's funny about it. It doesn't matter. Kansas City is the closest thing, I've said this for a while now, they're the closest thing to an NCAA basketball team, where it's like the regular season is the regular season.
Yeah.
They'll win the SEC or whatever, or the ACC, and then it's all about how good are you entering the tournament. Last year was another example of that. Packers ended up beating them in December here at Lambeau Field, but they just kept building. That's what New England did during its dynasty, and that's what Kansas City is doing.
And I think and not to go on too much of a tangent in the AFC, but I think what was most impressive about Kansas City's run to the Super Bowl championship last year is that they weren't just playing at Arrowhead in the playoffs. They had to go to Buffalo. Yep. They had to go to Baltimore. They were winning those playoff games on the road in order to get there. And again, that's where it sort of does become like they're the NCAA tournament team, where it doesn't matter if they end up with a 1 seed or a 4 seed or a 6 seed or whatever. They're going to be formidable in the postseason because they've been there and they've won those kinds of games in any condition, in any location. And you're right. And for all the attention that's going to be on this Buffalo-Kansas City matchup, it's probably just a preview of another matchup coming up in January. It's just a question of then where is that game going to be?
That's the only question that Josh Allen and Sean McDermott, they have to answer.
Yeah.
Is that question, because Kansas City has been the final boss. It's been the final boss for the entire league, but definitely Buffalo. Because Buffalo, we were talking beforehand about how Houston and the Bum Philly era would run into Pittsburgh, and things like that. Buffalo keeps running into Kansas City.
Yeah.
And it just cannot get through it. Now, that being said, for them being 9-0, the Chiefs still have a lot of issues. When you look at, they have been dinged up everywhere on the offense. I mean, now they brought in DeAndre Hopkins, and they made moves to try to augment that, but this is another example, I feel like, of proving why Patrick Mahomes is a perennial MVP contender, because he is lifting that football team up with the way he's playing, in addition to a very talented defense. But for me, for that reason, yes, eyes will be on that game, and certainly it's for the right reasons. But I think Baltimore and Pittsburgh's probably the one I have my most interest in, because Mike Tomlin's doing what he does, and Russell Wilson is resuscitating his career after people like myself questioned whether or not there was anything left in the gas tank. The Baltimore Ravens have a lot of issues now on defense, but they still got Lamar Jackson. So it's like seeing how all that interacts. That's what's fun about this time of the year, because all these teams are going to be in the playoffs, but these are where you kind of put your flag in the ground and say, I should be the one that's out front of this thing.
Right. And when you're talking these divisional matchups, that, not to say that anything's going to be decided in week 11, but a game that is going to have a big influence on who wins a division versus who ends. You're talking about the difference between maybe a 1 or a 2 seed and being a 5 seed, right? Because that's just how that's how the numbers break down, and how the structure of the playoffs breaks down, with the 4 division champions being 1 through 4.
And that's what, the longer I cover this league, the more you'll see it in my writing, the more you'll hear me say it on the show. Whether it's September or December, or now even January, you have to keep stacking those wins. Because how often is it, Mike? We'll be doing the same thing here with the Packers in week 17 and 18, hopefully, talking about, okay, playoff positioning, getting in, seeding, buys, all this type of stuff. And it all comes back to these games that you play in week 11 that at the time feel like you're just trying to get one win, but in reality have a much, much more important purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it should be a good one in Chicago, and
a good one in Green Bay, too.
Before we go, April, the countdown to the 2025 NFL Draft in Green Bay has begun. Mark your calendars for April 24 through April 26 of 2025, and visit greenbay.com/draft25 for more information. With that, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team and everything from Sunday's big game against the Bears at Soldier Field. Wes and I will be there. We will have it all for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I'm Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will See you next time.